Hi folks, my name is Sasan. This is Proteus Debate Academy, where we make high quality resources for free I'm trying to get this next slide up, for speech and debate competitors and coaches. This is like a breakdown of the stuff that we do. If you sense a little bit of like a manic energy in this video, it's because if I finish it and get it uploaded in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be able to eat Chipotle before I have to go teach. Wish me luck. I'm sure I made some sort of thumbnail that references me being a Z-list celebrity. What am I talking about? Well, I got a text from my old boss the other day that said, "You are in this book I'm reading." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "I bought a book just because it seemed interesting. I'm reading through it, and you are in this book. You're mentioned in the book. You're quoted in the book. So you might be wondering, what is the book and why am I in it? It's apparently called Beyond Dispute, and it's about constructive disagreement in Judaism, something that I'm not an expert in, but apparently have something to contribute to. Ally of the Jewish people, truly. How did that happen? Well, I used to work for a nonprofit called the Brooklyn Debate League, which still exists and is still doing really cool stuff. The person who texted me is Deco. They're standing on the right in that picture. On the left is John. Deco, John, and I ended up, they were on Humans of New York. That's how they got on the radar of Malcolm Gladwell, who did a debate that didn't go so well. And he wanted to get some coaching advice. So he had an episode on his show, Revisionist History, his podcast, where he had the Brooklyn Debate League on. It was Deco, John, and myself. And we basically just gave him advice on based on the debate that he was in. And most of that advice ended up centering around things like listening and note-taking. Although here's Malcolm Gladwell introducing me on the podcast.
Sasan is 30-something, extroverted, charismatic. In the John Grisham version of his life, he would be a trial lawyer who would win a $10 billion verdict from the jury in Mississippi. Deco.
That is in my resume. So, a few people heard that. No comments about me, by the way. There's about 15,000 comments on that video. Every one of them is about how much they hate Malcolm Gladwell. Not one mention of not like, oh, that's the song guy. That was good advice. No, I control F'd it. The only mention of me in all of those comments is from my ex-girlfriend's dad. And my ex-girlfriend was the one who coined the term that I'm a Z-list celebrity, which led to stuff like this, right? This book, like somebody is referencing that Malcolm Gladwell episode. They don't even mention any of us by name. They just say coaches at the Brooklyn Debate League. And then they quote an exercise I do where I say my own name in the exercise. I want to talk about that exercise because it has to do with flowing. And we're, 3 minutes into this, and now I have 27 minutes or I don't get to eat lunch. Let's talk about what that exercise is. It's about flowing. And I got an email that was from one of you. People don't like to comment on the videos, but I do get some emails sometimes, and you should email me. Anyway, it was about advice on getting students to flow more and not just rely on cards and exercises, and I ended up recommending this exercise, and the person said, "Oh, I already do this exercise." I guess I'm mentioning more than one exercise, but they say I already do this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a video about it anyway because it feels relevant. And I guess not everybody knows about this. So let's cover some basics first. What is flowing? Flowing is a way of taking notes that we do in competitive debate. It is a mix of shorthand and an argument map. What does that mean? Shorthand is a way of taking notes in a brief way. The notes are written really only for you to be able to understand it. Nobody else needs to read your shorthand. And it's an argument map because you can visually tell what is going on with this argument. This is a picture on the NSDA website of somebody's handwritten flow. And what I like about this flow is that it is blurry. You can't tell what the content is, but you can just look at the shapes and understand which arguments have been responded to, which arguments haven't been responded to, once you understand the basics of what a flow is. And you can get a sense of which side is winning, maybe. If you know, for instance, that impacts tend to go at the bottom, you can get a sense of what the strategy for each team should be. Which argument should they focus on? All of that is really, really valuable information to you in a debate. But also, if you're just starting out, like, you can tell if there's something that you haven't responded to that you should. This is why we flow. I think this is just everything I just said. This is what like a more digital flow looks like. This picture came from, I think, the Atlanta Urban Debate League. Now, the other thing that's really helpful about a flow that I didn't mention before is that everyone is flowing in the round in theory, and everyone is flowing everyone's speech in theory, which means that there should be a copy of the flow that looks really similar for every competitor in the round and the judge. So as a competitor, you can literally peek at the judge's notes if you're taking notes in the same way they are. And that assumes ideal conditions, but it's still a really useful thing to have. Now, I'm not going to teach flowing in this video. Specifically, like, that is the exact thing I didn't want to do when I made this channel 6 years ago. There's a lot of YouTube channels which started with a lot of enthusiasm and were like, I'm going to make a YouTube channel about debate. And they teach what public forum is for one episode, and then they have like, here's how you make an AF and here's flowing, and then they lose steam because it's a lot of work and no one watches those videos, except apparently 60,000 people watched Ryan Guy's video, which is kind of incredible. I think that's definitely, it might be more than our whole channel. But yeah, it just didn't really interest me, and we figured we'd make a channel that just talked about the sort of more advanced concepts, and the audience that was interested in that would just seek it out and find it, which is maybe how you found us. But so there's a lot of good resources on flowing. You can look at those first if you're not familiar with what flowing is. Ryan Guy is a friend, an old colleague of mine from college debate coaching in Northern California. I recommend this video, but all of the videos are good, I'm sure. Let's get into the first exercise, which is an exercise I like a lot. It's a storytelling exercise. I did this with Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell heard this story, and you take a classroom of kids and you tell them that you're going to tell them a story and you want them to write down as many details as possible. These are just some like screenshots from some slides I did on this. I'm just going to explain it to you in words though. You tell a story about something that once happened in your life. You want it to be a true story about something in your own life. One, because you want to make friends with your students, but also because you want to be able to throw in a ton of details that you didn't have to make up and you didn't have to memorize. You just remembered. So what I do is I tell the students about when I first came to the U.S., my first week in the U.S. in the 4th grade. I came home from school after my first day of school, and I went home to the wrong apartment. The door was unlocked. I just walked into the wrong apartment, and our apartment was empty, but I just assumed we'd gotten stuff while I was at school. I wasn't a terribly bright kid, and I saw a TV, and we didn't have a TV, and TV in Iran doesn't have cartoons, but I'd lived in Sweden previous to that, and I knew that this TV had cartoons on it right now. So I ran over to the TV and I turn on the TV and I find Cartoon Network and I find Thundercats, and I'm just gobsmacked at this, the first new cartoon I'd seen in 5 years at the age of like 9. And I watch an episode, and then notice that my mom and sister, who I thought were right behind me, like aren't home yet. And then I watch a second episode, and eventually I look around and realize this is not my home. There's like other people's pictures up. Like this is just some random house. Meanwhile, my mom and sister thought I had been kidnapped. So that is the story. And when I tell the story, I add in tons of details. The name of my elementary school, our mascot, Go Merwood Mustangs, the name of the street that I lived on, the bus line that we were waiting for my sister to come and take, things that were around the house, all these little details. And you tell the story at a relatively quick pace. You don't slow down, you don't repeat things, and then it becomes a challenge for the students to try to repeat back all of the details, and no one will have captured all of the details, but you call on somebody and you tell them to start telling the story, and you, after a certain point, you popcorn over to somebody else, but any detail they miss, I'd go, oh, what was the name of my school? And then people can shout it out. What was the bus that my sister was taking? The 105. What was the name of the apartment complex? The Four Seasons. So you do that, and then you go around and kids piece their notes together and tell the story. I think this is a great exercise for people who are starting in debate, maybe haven't even learned to properly flow yet, but you are just trying to get them improving at quickly taking notes in shorthand and getting it in bullet points rather than complete sentences. So this is a great exercise, but this is the exercise that people sort of ask me about. I didn't come up with this exercise. I learned it from somebody else. The first person I can, off the top of my head, remember referencing this to me is Mike Epley, who I worked with for a little while at Athens Debate. We used to compete against each other. That's a picture of us at my first national championships. So let's go into what that exercise is. This is an exercise done with playing cards. So students should understand that a flow works in several columns, and they are taking notes per speech, and you are giving a speech as though it is a regular debate speech, except all of the content is replaced with the name of a playing card. So what that might sound like is contention 1. My name is Sasan. I mean, you could see where I wrote in the earlier. You say it like a sentence, but you're like, my name is Sasan, and I'm the first speaker on the affirmative. The first contention is the Ace of Spades. And I think this is really important because the 3 of Hearts. Now, a lot of people think that what's going on here is the 7 of Diamonds, but really, experts say that it's the 9 of Clubs. Contention 2, one time the 6 of Spades, and you do that for the whole speech, and it's the task of the students in the room to identify that they should be writing this information in one vertical column on the left side of a page, but 2, to figure out that they should not be writing everything you say or handwriting out all of the like Ace of Spades. They should be did I do that correctly for the camera? No, I have to do it backwards. Ace of Spades, you can just put AS or 3H. I know that that's the 3 of Hearts. You know that that's the 3 of Hearts. Maybe a random person seeing your notes wouldn't understand that, but you will remember in 15 minutes what you meant. Then you say, okay, now I'm somebody else. Hey, I don't know what that guy was talking about. They say Ace of Spades, but really it's more like the 4 of Spades. And where they say 7 of Diamonds, experts now actually say 6 of Clubs. And of course, 9 of Clubs has so outdated. Much more recently, we found out that it's actually 7 of Hearts. On contention 3, or you might not even say like on contention 3. You might just say where they say Queen of Hearts, it's the King of Spades, really. And the students taking the notes need to now not only take the notes vertically down, but they need to identify what is being responded to, write the response next to the correct thing. They need to skip the things that aren't being responded to, and they need to, like, they should, by being able to look at this, tell you that contention 2 was dropped entirely, for instance. But you keep going. Now here's what the second half speech looks like. These are extensions to contention 2, which is why they are the same card, right? They are just mentioning them again so that they get on the flow and they get extended. And then finally, this second neg speech. Now, you can use this, like, it's not just about taking the notes, it's about the questions that you get to ask later. Like, for example, what arguments were brought up in every speech? And students should be able to identify that this ace of spades point on the contention and this queen of hearts point on contention 3 were consistently mentioned throughout every speech. And while that might make it a really important point, it also makes it something that's probably going to be difficult for a judge to rule on, to distinguish, like, which side is winning. On the other hand, an argument that was dropped and extended is conceded, so a judge has to treat it as true. So what arguments were dropped and conceded? Obviously the arguments in contention 2, but also some of the responses on contention 1 were dropped and conceded. There are things that got dropped, like the king of diamonds, the 3 of hearts, the 4 of diamonds, but they weren't brought up again. So it wouldn't count as extended, and that might matter or might not matter, right? But then you can also get into some more, like, abstract questions, like who's winning this debate? And you can get some opinions on that. I think who's winning this debate, absent us knowing what the negations contentions are, I'd say the affirmative is probably winning this, assuming that they have something at least decent on contention 2, because it is completely conceded. And as long as that is something a judge can vote on, it's likely that in this debate they must vote on it. But what often happens in a debate when people are starting out is they will just respond to what their opponent responded to and focus on what their opponent focused on. So they wouldn't recognize that actually contention 2, if I'm the AF, is where I need to put my focus. And where do you go from there? From there, you can make it a lot more complicated. You can add the negations arguments on a separate sheet. You can have more arguments. You can have more detailed arguments. So here's another one that I did where it's like a parley, a college parley style top of case and just an advantage one, where there would probably be 2 advantages. And you can see, like, different things are labeled. So now, instead of it just being, you know, this idea where it's contention 1 and here's 4 things that I have to say, each thing has a specific label and has a specific function. So we have uniqueness 1 is the 8 of diamonds. The internal link 1 is the 7 of diamonds. The second impact is the ace of diamonds. Solvency is 2 cards or 2 arguments, the ace of clubs and the 8 of diamonds. And this is a great way for people to get to learn the function of these arguments, right? Not like it's not just contentions. You can also use this to teach counterplans and theory and critiques, or at least practice flowing those things and recognize, like, oh, you've dropped the standards on this theory argument. What are the implications of that? And students identifying these things in the abstract is what you're going for, because a lot of times students will see an argument and all they can parse is the content, in a theory argument or like a critique. They might only understand it or think about it in terms of the subject matter being discussed, and they are not necessarily thinking of it in terms of what are the parts of this argument and how are each of those parts functioning? Where are the weaknesses? What are the implications of this part of this argument being dropped? And I think that's a really important thing. In Parley, we write all of our arguments every round. And we need a really strong understanding of how these parts of arguments function for us to be able to write these arguments really, really quickly. In other formats of debate, that's not as common, especially nowadays where it's really easy for people to find pre-written arguments, either because their coaches contributed to them or because they get it from briefs or a wiki or somebody else shares it with them. And so I find that a lot of like novice and intermediate and maybe some like advanced debaters today like don't really have a great sense of like how they're constructing their arguments rather than just piecing together like 4 or 5 pieces of evidence on the same topic. And this is a great way of testing students on that, getting them to understand the implications of a solvency argument or like a perm on a counterplan being conceded, right? And like visually identify that rather than only think of the debate in terms of specific arguments. And you can also just get better at flowing doing this, right? So for example, one thing that this doesn't accomplish that this does is sometimes one argument has multiple responses. Can you keep organized while responding to that? I don't think that this is the best flow I've ever seen, because it kind of seems like I don't necessarily buy that these arguments are all direct, exact responses to each other. Normally, there's like a little bit more nuance and stuff is getting like missed and passing by each other. It usually looks a little bit more like this, where advantage 1 has uniqueness 1. Uniqueness 1 gets 2 responses to it, and then those responses might get 1 response to it, and then you have a dropped and extended 10 of spades argument there, right? Which is a level of detail that you want students, or for yourself if you're a competitor, to be able to identify. Oh, when I do this, it doesn't show. Oh, yes, it does. Okay, cool. Well, hey, folks, I think normally my energy is a little less frantic and my thoughts are a little clearer and my diction a little bit more, what is the adjective for well dictated? Better enunciated. I don't know. But I do think I will, in fact, be able to get that burrito. So I look forward to that. I also look forward to hearing your thoughts, either on this topic, in the comments maybe, or you can just email me. You can reach out to me however you like. Take care and enjoy your debate season.